Hey, and welcome to The Bullet, Santiago Revolver Magazine podcast. We are here today in Infrasondido Studio Infrasondido, excuse me, we're in Spanish. And we're here today with DJ Roach, a.k.a. Frank Roach. We are going to be hearing all about the drum and bass scene in Santiago. And let's listen to a little mix of his. We'll come right back with a little conversation. So we got to hear a little bit of the mixes you do, and just to give a little introduction, this is Sean, by the way. If you've been listening, you know who I am. It's Monday the 13th. It's a gorgeous summer day. It was cold this weekend. We were having freaky spring weather, but I'm loving today. And we're here talking about the drum and bass scene in Santiago. And for people that don't know what drum and bass is, can you give a simplified version of what drum and bass is?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of difficult after being in it for so many years to kind of just sort of simplify it. But it's an urban form of music that was inspired a lot by different kind of music. It was from America, from Jamaica, and then it got caught up in the whole rave thing that happened in England at the late 80s, during the late 80s. And it just kind of brings all these influences together. So it's got a bit of hip hop in the drums, in the rhythm, a bit of reggae kind of bass lines, and then it's all thrown in with a kind of electronic slant It's got kind of the grooves from house music and the futuristic thing of techno as well. And it's just a real mixture of different sounds.
Yeah, and as an artist, it's really hard to define something that you're creating. As somebody who is writing about it or talking about it, it's easier to define and categorize music, art, any kind of creation after someone else has created it. But if you're the one creating it, which you are doing, and what you're doing is you're taking a lot of mixes of different musics and mixing them together and meshing them together. Now, I remember, I'm old enough to remember jungle music when it first came out.
Yeah.
How is jungle different from drum and bass?
Yeah, that's a question a lot of people ask. For a lot of people that have been into the scene from the beginning, it's just one same scene, basically. It was kind of like a strategic thing at one point, because jungle, which was the early form of drum and bass, it kind of had a bit of a bad name for itself. Like, there was a lot of people that were starting to associate it with a kind of bad vibe in the parties, or it was kind of getting very associated with just one kind of sound, which had a lot to do with ragga and dancehall. And as I said before, this comes from different influences, a bit of techno, a bit of house, a bit of hip hop. So I think the original DJs, the pioneers of the scene, they didn't really want it to become this one-dimensional thing, stigmatized just by a kind of bad attitude or a bad vibe at parties. So then they just suddenly threw the term drum and bass in, and people started to say it was a new style. Okay, cool.
I think, like with any new genre or any genre recreated, or however you want to say it, this is pretty new since the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been a lot of people sort of think, oh, this must be some kind of fast music that it just occurred to someone to invent it just out of, overnight or whatever. But it's been an ongoing process. It didn't start off as a fast style of music. It just started bringing everything together, like the break beats with sub kind of bass line. And then it just slowly started to get faster and faster.
So drum and bass music is kind of where the music started, when you started feeling your chest vibrate when you walked into a room.
Yeah, I mean, it's that word bass is key in the whole sound of it. I mean, a lot of other electronic forms of music tend to be a bit more trebly or very kind of synthy, mid-range sounding. So it's a kind of real sacred part of the style to kind of... The bass is what a lot of people grew up on in England. Hearing it, like, maybe your neighbour used to listen to reggae music, or down the road they do parties or whatever. Bass is always the kind of sound that you'd associate with the street, kind of.
So you gave me a brilliant segue. I'm gonna actually talk a little bit about and ask you more about, you grew up in England. You were born in Chile, got to England. Were you even a year old yet, or were you?
Yeah, I was just a baby. I was a year old when I left.
So you grew up with English culture and English music, all the kind of mixes of people which town did you grow up in?
I mainly grew up in London.
Okay, so talk about a diverse community of folk. So what was the scene like there? I mean, did you start out, like, I can say personally that my taste of music has changed drastically since I was 12. What were the things that really turned you on musically when you were like...
That's an interesting question, because that's one of the things that's actually surprised me, that when I meet up with people that share the same passion for music that I've got, we seem to have this really long history where we've sort of been listening to the same influences that just keep evolving and evolving into different branches or styles. So I guess when I was about, I don't know, 10 or 8 even, like early 80s, I was listening to electro, all the early kind of rap music, a bit of reggae, a bit of ska music. And I tell some people about that and they find it hard to believe, but in England, believe me that from a very young age you get into music.
Well, and the ska scene in England was, I don't know if it still is, but was pretty hopping.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the first things I observed, like, as being a very young child. When I got to terms with this kind of urban teenager culture, I could see it through the ska scene. Like, I could see the older kids that were maybe in their teens. They used to dress a certain way. They'd get together to go out to a party and they'd listen to certain kind of music. My first contact with a kind of subculture was definitely through that ska thing around 79, 80, 81.
Yeah. And I was listening to Casey Kasem's Top 40. I used to be ashamed to say that, but it's part of me. It's part.
Yeah, they actually used to show that in England.
Yeah,
about 3 a.m. in the morning or something.
Yeah. It was on every Sunday or something, and they counted down all the top hits. But anyway, so the ska scene was the kind of where you cut your teeth. On your music. Yeah,
because it also was very important because it kind of brought together white people with black people, which was kind of... Now it's not such a big deal, but in that time...
it was a big deal.
There was a lot of racial tension in a lot of parts of... Well, not just in England, but around the world.
Yeah.
And two-tone... The early ska came out of the label called Two-Tone, and I think that was kind of very symbolic of like the black and white element behind it all.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I never even thought of that.
And it was also kind of modified because it wasn't the same ska music that came out in the 60s. When it came out, again, it was kind of like a revival. It had a bit of an English influence in it.
It was a little harder, too.
It had a punk influence in it as well.
It had an edge to it. It seemed like it kind of evolved from the punk grunge, or was pre-grunge.
It was definitely a post-punk thing that happened.
Sweet. So you had the ska scene going, and then this thing called raves started happening.
Yeah.
All over English-speaking countries. I don't know about other cultures, but they were really
in
big.
between definitely was the electro and the hip-hop thing.
Yeah.
That was throughout the whole kind of mid-80s.
Yeah.
But the big change, and now the other day in Cine Arte La Mer, I was even watching a film, this In Edit festival they're doing.
Yeah.
And it showed like the origins of like the warehouse rave scene in England, and it was a real revolution. I mean, it really did change the country. Like, every time I go back to England now, I can really kind of draw parallels and say, look, when I was a kid, it was kind of completely different. People were like this or like that.
I walked to work both ways, 1 mile uphill in the snow or school.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that really did change nightlife, I'd say, more than anything. I mean, there wasn't really any proper nightlife in England before.
Really?
At least in the 70s and 80s, it
because
was really kind of dead.
Okay.
Like, clubs would close at 1 or 2, pubs would shut at 11 o'clock.
Right. Because people would go to pubs directly after work and then go home early.
Yeah, and I think there was just so many laws that used to restrict people. And people weren't even aware of it until they realised that when you wanted to do a party, the police would come down and shut down your party. And
really?
So it brought this whole issue out, and obviously the youth kind of came out in rebellion to say, who are they to stop us from having a good time or whatever, or listen to the music we want to do. And
So with raves, how did the music change? So you have your ska, you have your reggae, you have hip hop, you have electrical, and now the raves are coming out. Is this where it started mixing? It started getting heavier into bass? What did you hear and see different in the music?
Yeah, at the very beginning, from an English point of view, it was all very foreign. It was mainly music from America, like Chicago house, Detroit techno, even a bit of hip hop still involved.
Yeah.
But it only took a matter of months until all the people in England started to make it their own, because they were just so caught up in this thing of the raves, going out every weekend, listening to pirate radios.
So did raves actually kind of take off in the States first?
The music, definitely, because it comes from the kind of underground scenes in New York and Chicago.
Because in Washington, D.C., they had a ton of raves, but this is like 86, 87.
Yeah.
And they were pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I think's happened quite a few times. Like, the English have this sort of good eye or ear to kind of pick up on something, and then they take it back to England, transform it, make it into something really different, really exciting, and then all the rest start to follow,
Like Lipton tea.
Yeah.
No, that's a horrible example. I take it back. So the raves started changing, and England started getting, or the UK started getting its own form of music that was going into the raves. And at what point did it start breaking off into styles of music?
Definitely. I mean, that's where drum and bass starts to develop as one of the... It all started to splinter into different things because it kind of brought everyone together. Everyone was really happy at the beginning. There was this really kind of feel-good thing about these raves were bringing black people, white people, rich people, poor people together. Mm-hmm. But that lasted maybe just for a couple of years, and then people were like, no, but I don't like that kind of music. Right. I prefer this style, or I would prefer it to be this way. And it just all naturally started to split up.
And I think that's pretty organic with music, with art, that you have a base seed project or creation or work that inspires all kinds of different versions of itself.
Yeah, and people started to go back to their roots as well. Like, you know, I didn't just abandon reggae to get into this music or whatever. Yeah. So people still picked up on the things that they liked about music, be it in the rhythm or in the bass, you know.
So now, did you start DJing in the UK?
Yeah, I was what they call a bedroom DJ. So
explain that. That just sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in England, at least at that time, it would take a long time to actually come out and start calling yourself a DJ. I think there's a lot of respect for the guys that were actually out there doing it, playing in the clubs.
Do it, absolutely.
So you would just be called a bedroom DJ because you would just mix tapes and hang out with your friends, and you're probably just a teenager.
As if you were a kid doing the double tape dubbing, and mixing your tape and hanging out and being like, here's my tape.
Exactly.
And then they would play it, somebody else would put it on for you.
Yeah, there'd be a long way to get from the bedroom to a club.
Isn't that always the way? So wait, this is before digital. This is back in cassettes.
Yeah, everything was totally different then.
Mixing with cassettes is pretty... So explain that process, actually, because there's a lot of folks maybe listening that don't know the cassette dubbing process other than having watched their parents maybe do it. Dubbing drum and bass from a cassette point of view, how... Like a real quick... I
mean, in the early days, we obviously all used to play vinyl. I mean, that was the format, and it still is for many until this day. But any recording obviously would be made on tape, and even before you could afford to get the decks, because like to buy a couple of turntables was a lot of money back then. Yeah. A lot of people would, as you say, actually just mix with two tapes and kind of try and manipulate it with your finger, or some guys would open it all up and kind of find a way of slowing it down.
Oh, weird.
You didn't do anything really. You just mix whatever you had.
I didn't think about that.
You know, and that just comes in the tradition of, I guess, a lot of reggae is kind of very handcrafted. People making their own speakers and you know.
Huh. So you brought us in a recording of one of your mixes today, and we listened to a little bit of it in the beginning. Tell us about this recording that you brought in, because I haven't had the pleasure yet.
Well, that basically is just something I put together. Like right now, the thing is, it's hard for me to realise sometimes, but the music is quite old now. Like we've been through a lot of stages, a lot of moments, and some people even say that drum and bass now is not what it was before, or whatever. But I think there is still a real underground scene within the scene that sticks closely to its roots. Because I think there are a lot of new generation involved now, and they have their own interpretation of the music. They didn't go through hip-hop or ska or the early rave scene. They probably just see it as really fast, crazy rave music that you can, you know, get off, you can take pills to or whatever.
Do you know what's going to be really scary is when all... folks our age are the old people with tattoos and piercings going, back when I was a kid, I remember when the young days and back in the day. It's going to happen. I mean,
I'd say in a way it's already happening, because some of us are already hitting 40 and some of us, even out of me and my friends, some of us still DJ. And we don't realise, but some of the kids are like 18 or 19, half our age, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's cool.
I know, it's good. It's really cool. So anyway, about the mix, I still play kind of what I would call across the board within the style. Obviously, it's all drum and bass. but I still try and keep the different elements within the music. I want there to be a little old school feel to the music that I still play. So there is still a bit of techno or dub. The breaks have to be there, the break beats that came originally from hip hop. I like all of that to still be present in the music. Otherwise, it's just kind of boring to me. So
okay, let's listen to a little more of the mix from DJ Roach, and then we'll come back because I want to know what these break beats are. All right, here we go. All right. Welcome back. And all right, let's, I want to hear about break beats. And there was something else I read, which I kind of think I might know, but I want to hear it from the source. The break beats and the amen break.
Amen break.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. It's not amen.
Or
it's not
like. It depends how you pronounce amen or amen.
Okay,
the religious words.
Let's hear it from the source. I want to hear about these two elements of drum and bass.
Yeah, well, basically, a break beat is a beat that has been sampled from an original drum track. Mm-hmm. So you can get it. The source can be any original recording of a drum, mm-hmm. a real live drummer playing drums. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the break beat would be like a recording that you can then loop, mm-hmm. and then that becomes the kind of groove of the new beat that you're playing.
Okay.
So that was originally done not by drum and bass, it was originally done in the hip-hop scene in the 80s, but they used to do it at a slower speed.
Yeah, much slower.
Yeah, so what drum and bass did, as it was in the rave thing, so there was a certain energy behind it, it just started getting faster and faster.
Yeah.
So what you hear in drum and bass are fast break beats, and a lot of them are recorded originally from funk records like James Brown,
right? Or
this particular break, which is why you say the Amen break. Yeah. It's called the Amen break because it comes from a tune by the Amen brothers, where there's a drum sample that you can get for about 12 seconds that appears in virtually nearly all the drum and bass tracks until now. Yeah, and that's from 1970 or 71.
Okay.
And drum and bass, because it's more technological, people started to edit these drum loops.
Okay,
Instead of it just being a repetitive loop, you can then start separating the kick, the snare, and really being creative with the rhythmic aspects of the music.
So it's kind of like you're kind of like a digital drummer. I mean,
Yeah.
you're taking beats and you're looping and separating and just not particularly. I mean, maybe some people do play the drums on their own, but you're digitally manipulating them as if you were playing the drums in a different fashion and much faster.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's gone through different trends. Like there was times when the drums got a bit overly complex and you couldn't even dance to them anymore. And lately, and you can probably hear it a bit in the mix that I've just done,
Okay.
that now we're kind of going back to slightly more simple sound again.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. You coming back to Chile. So you've gone through your music. You're a bedroom DJ. You're maybe playing a few parties here and there, but
Yeah.
were you feeling like a full-fledged DJ when you left the UK?
I felt I was really onto something because I left
Okay.
at the real creative moment when hardcore started to become jungle, which was a splinter
Yeah.
of the rave scene. And
Yeah.
that was basically when I came to Chile.
Okay.
Like I was about 17 or 18 when I moved
Okay.
over.
So were you still in Colegio or were you going to university?
I'd finished school in England.
Okay.
And music was a big part of my life. I was
Yeah.
hanging out in the record shops, going to a few raves,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
And your family was returning to Chile.
Yeah. My family was coming back because the reason we'd left in the first place had to do with the coup
Yeah.
and the military, the dictatorship and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you came back and you as a baby, you're not going to remember anything but stories. So tell me about your first impressions coming from London, one of the more cosmopolitan cities of the world, to Santiago, which today is quite a different city than it was. In what year did you return?
Definitely. I arrived around 92, more or less.
All right. Okay, so tell us about your first impressions here, just arriving and also musically.
Yeah, there was quite a few different angles to look at it. Firstly, I think I had my family to see. I wanted to kind of discover my history, get to know my grandparents and all the people that I'd not grown up with.
Yeah.
And I think that really absorbed me for a good few months when I first arrived, and I was obviously very happy, and that was a very emotional experience for me.
Yeah.
But then after, I had to start waking up and realizing, what if I stay here for the rest of my life? Is this really my new home? What am I going to do here? Do I actually like it here? And I think there was just a whole confusion of not really knowing where I fitted in and what part of my identity really had to do with this country. And I actually started for a minute feeling a bit more British than I actually thought I was, because I grew up thinking I was Chilean, and I got here, everyone used to just call me gringo. And I liked kind of weird, funny music that no one knew about at that time. So
and you grew up speaking Spanish in your household.
Yeah.
When you arrived, did you have any problems understanding the Chilean Spanish?
A little. I kind of understood everything, but people would always remind me that I spoke kind of funny.
Right.
Or things like that.
Which always is fun.
Yeah. It was just kind of cheap gags or jokes.
Right, Or if you pronounce something poorly and it's a really dirty word, they let you say it for 6 months.
Exactly.
You know who I'm talking about out there. No, that never happened to me. So you arrive back and you're looking around, suddenly realizing how much of your culture that you've grown up with is really British.
Yeah.
And so you've got this music that is totally new and very foreign to a lot of people that have grown up in Chile. So how did this evolve into you DJing here?
Yeah, it was a long process, because when I got here, there wasn't even musically, England and Chile were just light years away from each other. You know, there wasn't there wasn't much nightlife after the dictatorship and everything. There weren't many spots or places you could go out to that were good. You know.
Yeah, and for anybody who's not real familiar with what the time period during the dictatorship meant for nightlife, there was a curfew. And basically, I don't know what the hours were, and I think they changed at random times. But it basically was wherever you were when the curfew hit is where you stayed until morning. Therefore, if you were having a house party, the house party would start, let's say the curfew started at 8 p.m. The house party would go from 8 p.m. until 8 a.m. or whenever the curfew lifted in the morning. So the nightlife, or people just didn't go out. I do know a few people that really suffer if they have to go out because they're just not accustomed to it, and they're in their late 30s.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just what they grew up with is always staying home. So just a little different perspective on being able to, I walked around with my dog at 9 and 10 p.m. at night on a little island, so totally different perspective. So please continue.
Yeah, I mean, so there was the whole after effects of that, and there was kind of a social trauma of just trying to get back to normal life. I think people just had very few aspirations, and people were fascinated as well hearing my story, that I was someone from another country. They used to ask me all the time about what England was like, what people do over there. Hardly anyone here had left the country. So it was a very different reality to the one we see now. I think Santiago is now a far more cosmopolitan place.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's diverse. There are a lot more foreign people here as well. But yeah, my music definitely didn't fit in at the time. I even kind of gave up at one point. I was thinking, no, I don't think Chileans are into this. It's not their music.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with them. And I even tried to adapt a little to the taste at the time. I think a lot of people here
so
were
you started doing Quaker drum and bass?
Not quite. That would have been quite cool, actually. But no, it was more like...
Wait a minute, there's an idea.
No, I think people here were just listening to music that in England people had listened to 20 or 30 years ago.
I do.
The music that I grew up in England thinking was old people's music.
Right, and it was boring because it was played so much on the radio.
Exactly, and here all my young friends were listening to music from the 70s and whatnot. Yeah. But, I like music in general, so I didn't have such a big deal about doing that. But I did miss my space, and it started to bug me, so I think half the time I just sort of said to myself, I have to do something about this. It can't be that I'm wrong just because I'm a minority, that I'm listening to the wrong kind of music or whatever. Yeah. So it just took time until I started to go out more, get to know more people. And then I started to realise that I wasn't the only guy that had come back after the whole political experience that my parents had gone through, that there were thousands of us. Yeah. So we would occasionally meet up. Like I'd go to a bar or a little club somewhere, and I'd meet another guy that had come back from Canada, from Australia, or from wherever, Romania, Africa, all over the world. Conversation experience, epiphany. Yeah, no, I mean, I think they were the first kind of people that I gelled with, that I felt a lot in common with. Yeah. And even till now, a lot of my good friends are people that lived abroad. Yeah. And together and with other people, eventually we started to open these new spaces, and we had our little club thing, DJ thing. And it just was a gradual thing that I think towards the end of the 90s, there was enough people for the press to start saying, hey, there's this new thing, and they started to call it electronic music. They call it electronica still a lot. Which música electrónica. Yeah, which is kind of very vague. Generic. Yeah. I never really liked the term. No, it sounds like they've remade that movie Tron. Yeah. That horrific movie from like 1981 that was so bad that people cringed when they say the name, and they've remade it. But when I think of electronica, I think of the movie Tron from the 80s. The movie now, I don't know, maybe it's good. Yeah, that electronic kind of concept, it didn't seem cutting edge or kind of rebellious in any way. So now, was there a moment where you went to the British Council to try to promote? Tell me about that. Yeah, I had to basically take a big leap because I started to realise that Chile would not turn out to be the same as what England had been like, where in England you had an underground scene that from the grassroots would grow up. I realised that in Chile things are the other way around. You have to sort of come from the top and then it filters down.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
And it happens on all fronts, be it economical, cultural, whatever. Things that from grassroots just tend to stay there, you know. And I was kind of like very excited, and this whole thing was moving so fast that I didn't have time to develop. I mean, we had our little underground thing, but I realised that what made sense would be for us to make something bigger, something more appealing to the press, get all kinds of people to come along to our party. So I approached the British Council. We did a project together. And that meant that in the year 2001, we got together and we organised the first big international drum and bass event.
Really?
Yeah. So we kind of jumped from being small parties with maybe 100 or so people to doing one with 1,200 people.
Big, just a tenfold jump.
Exactly. And with press coverage, we got the council to... Well, they obviously organised it too, but they covered a lot of the costs. We brought 3 artists from England. And this happened at a time that all this was kind of new in Chile. So it caused enough of a buzz to get people asking, what is this new thing? What is drum and bass? It's not just all electronic music. There are different styles and things. And it worked really well, and that then kept us active for the next few years. We did a few more things with the British Council.
And this was in what year?
This was around 2001 and 2002.
Okay, cool.
And for a moment, drum and bass even became kind of trendy. You know, in Santiago, it was kind of, we had parties every week or midweek. And so
you went from being the bedroom DJ to like kind of...
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great.
I love that
it was
term.
also a good way to shut up a lot of the skeptics. You know, people that always said, nah, that Chile's not ready for that kind of stuff, or no one likes your music.
Yeah. Well, success is absolutely the best silencer of curmudgeons and naysayers, I will have to say, in general. But so you're now going from 100 people in small underground clubs to parties with 1,000. There's a party every week or so, and the scene is growing. Okay, so we're in 2002. How did you see the Chilean scene progressing? Did you see it changing? Did you hear the music changing? Did you see the crowds changing?
Yeah, at that time, there came a whole boom with this thing we've mentioned, like electronic music. And then you had other people like Street Machine and Pasan Cosas, other promoters at the time that started to do... They started to bring the whole big... glam thing to the parties. Not drum and bass, I'm talking about house music and other forms of dance music.
And I'm just gonna, I can't remember what party I went to, like Sensation White, where they have all kinds of floats and dancers and confetti and lights and people that might step on you if you don't move, that are in costumes and stilts, and the spectacle.
They brought this mega production to the thing, and that was way out of our league. Our buzz, our excitement.
Totally different thing too.
Our thing was directly from the music and the vibe of the people there, and there was no difference. Like, there was all kind. Again, what I was really happy about was that we kind of recreated the same vibe from England, getting all the different people together. We had like the cuicos or the flaitas, as people say here, all together. Foreign people, it didn't matter, and no dress codes, people wearing trainers or whatever. So you'd look out on the dance floor and you'd see a slice of every single socioeconomic structure in Chile out on that dance floor. People who had come in from abroad, people who were living here their whole life, everything. Yeah, and also people that probably walked in with a heavy metal background or a salsa background, different forms of music. People weren't having to buy into this drum and bass thing. Well, in drum and bass, I hear fashion,
good, because it's new, and so people couldn't define themselves by it at that time, probably. Yeah,
and hopefully, I'd like to believe that what I still represent is not so fashion inclined. It's not just about a look or this or that. It's about a genuine feel that you have or connection with the music. that whether you like it or not. You know?
And there are certain like salsa, not salsa, but there's certain Latin rhythmic. That's not a word. That's just not a word. But rhythms that are in the drum and bass that are just real guttural.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the big breakthroughs and that had us all very excited was when we heard that in Brazil, drum and bass was huge.
So, and that may be, and I know I've heard Brazilian jungle, techno jungle. Am I making this up?
Well,
Brazilian drum and bass?
There is Brazilian forms of drum and bass, and we were lucky to have our scene going on at the same time.
Nice.
And that got some real global recognition because it was, I think around the world people always value when someone takes an idea and then adds something new to it.
Yeah,
and that's what the Brazilians did. They took drum and bass, started to mix it with bossa nova and a bit of samba. And that was a really good, exciting moment for us as well, because that way we had the other people doing the mega productions and the glamorous thing, but we got back to doing something a bit more creative, and it appealed to all kinds of people because it had a slightly more melodic side to it as well. So we could mix up really hard, dark drum and bass or melodic, sweet sounding stuff as well.
So like death rock drum and bass.
Yeah, so some people call it kind of almost death metal-y sounding. I mean, that's not my particular style, but we play anything really. We just like the whole emotion of hard beats or soft melodies. It doesn't matter. We just put it all together. Yeah,
it's all really the rhythm and the speed more so than... And then the songs are tailored towards the DJ and preference and the weather and the temperature.
Yeah, and the moment of the vibe at the night, people are really into the music,
So this is a good question, not being a DJ at all, and being even horrible setting up my own playlists that are on preset recording stuff. When you're doing parties, are you just kind of improvising, or do you have preset mixes in your head, or do you have a certain idea and flow that you're going to start with and just shift as you go? Like, what's the process at a party?
Well, I'd say that any old school DJ is strictly about improvisation. I mean, there's been a whole lot of technology now that's kind of taking people towards preparing things at home or adding different things here and there, or even not even using turntables anymore and things like that. There is, I mean, I'm open to accepting anything really. I'm not that close-minded about it. But for me, it's all about just quickly looking at the crowd or remembering something you maybe heard when you were mixing in your room and then bringing it out on people and seeing what happens and seeing how people react to it,
So you're kind of... What I'm hearing you say, or what I'm making up in my head, I don't know. But is what I'm hearing is you're basically reading the night, reading the crowd, and then going out and kind of interpreting it.
Yeah, that's kind of like the magic of it. I mean, we're not really musicians in the traditional sense, but we do have that power to really hype everyone up and make people have a really good time at a party, and that's something that other people have started to latch onto, and they're like, so this is quite a powerful form of music in the end, It's not just some weak, computer-made music. It actually has a lot of balls to it, and it works,
it's I've been to some shows that 3.5 hours later I'm like, oh Jesus, I've been dancing for 3.5 hours and I haven't had anything unusual this evening. And it's just the music. It's just the music. So how would you describe the drum and bass scene today and the music scene in general in Santiago? You've now been here a few years. And you've seen a lot of changes. How would you, just taking a look around, first at the drum and bass scene and then just kind of the music scene, and I've only been here 4 years.
Right.
This month, wow. And I've seen it change a lot. My neighborhood especially, we've lost a lot of houses to apartment buildings, even just urban growth. Terremoto related. Was Spanglish. But the music scene, I mean, you've been right there for a good number of years when some of the biggest changes in Santiago and Chile musically have been happening.
Yeah, no, I mean, the country's just been changing on every level. I mean, what you said, like a building disappearing and then another one being built on top of it or whatever, it's pretty much what's been happening with music as well. And at the very beginning, it was quite easy to sort of impress people. Like, you could just say, hey, this guy's from England, and it could be absolute nobody, and people would line up and pay a ticket to go and see him, you know. Or,
look at me, I'm from afar.
Yeah, or people would even try to put me on the flyer saying that I was British, you know, even though I'd been here for 10 years already by then or whatever.
Yeah.
So we've kind of moved from a real kind of simplistic, naive kind of thing to a more demanding circuit now. I mean, here people now, they're not that willing to just go and splash money out on any old show anymore. And
so it's a little more discerning audience, a little more educated.
They've become a bit more cynical as well, because a lot of people really ripped off a lot of people, you know. There was a lot of lying and bullshitting about what was new, what was good, and people then started to realise that there was a lot of fakeness about certain things, and that's a real shame.
Yeah, because with any scene, any place, any type of emerging anything, or you're going to have some people who are pretty straightforward about what they're doing and what the expectations are going to be, and then you have other folks who just tell lies when the truth sounds better.
I believe it. I mean, as well, other people aspire to different things. I mean, some people want to be famous out of this whole DJ thing, you know, and they're willing to step on other people's work or whatever. So we've had to deal with all kinds of things, you know. And
growing pains of drum and bass.
And on top of that, we've all grown up a bit, you know. There's a whole group of us. People like Fat Pavlo, Black Soul, some of the MCs, Pab and Tian and Pete, whatever. We're all like mid-30s, some of us are towards 40 now. And, you know, we just like to enjoy the music we play. We can't be asked anymore about getting into problems or having debts or anything like that, you know.
Different perspective.
Yeah. And also, we're not into just pleasing the crowd anymore. We like to musically express what we feel because of the years and years that we've been involved in this, you know.
Cool. So how does this compare to the international drum and bass scene? I mean, is that just kind of in the background and every country has taken its different interpretation of it, or how? I'd
say pretty much so. I mean, I think now it's just so accessible to people. Before, if you wanted to find a drum and bass party in Santiago or even in London years ago, you really had to be quite daring to go out and venture into the right sort of club, or know the right people that would
know somebody
would show
who knew
you.
somebody who knew the double secret knock.
Because you wouldn't just open up a page on the internet or tune into the FM dial and hear it. You really had to go out and discover this kind of music. But not anymore. You know, now it's so easy just to download sets all day or tracks and people swapping them and whatnot.
So how is the internet? I mean, that's a really good question. I know that in the days of vinyl and cassettes and having to hunt things down manually, the internet now has made everything so, on every level, so accessible. I mean, even to this WikiLeaks scandal where cables are being transmitted and copied and shared, and I haven't even read the entire story because it just sounds WikiLeaks. Come on.
Yeah, I'm a bit lost on that as well.
Yeah, I will. I mean,
I know about it, but I just don't know what to believe nowadays.
It sounds like a diaper brand. I'm sorry. You won't leak with WikiLeaks. So internet radio now. How has that affected?
I mean, internet as a whole has really changed music. You know, I mean, people don't even buy music anymore. When we started DJing here, you really had to make a big effort to order your records, get someone to lend you money, or do whatever you could to get hold of your music.
Because everything was coming in from abroad that was new.
Exactly.
And you'd have to order it for imports.
Yeah, and it would even sometimes get lost, or it would take months to arrive. But you do it because you're so into the music, you do that.
Yeah.
But now, I ain't going to name any names, but it's just full of DJs now that I know that they've never ever paid for money. Paid money for a tune, and they just spend the whole day downloading folders of music, and it's really kind of lazy, you know.
It's so different.
Yeah, and I don't even know if they know what they're playing, the name of the track or who made it. It's just kind of becoming a bit more disposable in some ways.
Right.
They're just looking at a screen, a list of tracks, and that's it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sampling what they like and throw it, okay. Huh.
And some people just, they start off being a DJ just by, someone gives them a DVD with, I don't know, 5 gigs of tunes, and that's it. And they think, all right, I'm going to download this software now.
Yeah.
And overnight they become a DJ.
And now, and you're just thinking back when you were hauling around crates and crates and crates of vinyls to every show that you have to DJ at.
We've got back problems now. And things like that, you know?
The joys of getting old. Well, we're going to listen to a little more of the mix you brought in, and I think we'll just sign off now, and we'll end today's show listening to the rest of the mix. Thank you so much for coming in. This has been Sean with The Bullet, a Revolver Santiago Megazine publication or podcast, and it's Monday the 13th of December. We're almost into 2011. I think Chile's going to be really glad to see 2010 go bye-bye. So thank you, DJ Roach, and
thanks very much.
We're going to just enjoy the tunes and have a fantastic weekend. And if we don't talk to you before the new year, we'll talk to you before the new year. Have a good day.